I'm going to immediately invite our next panelist and the moderator, Tatiana Karapanagioti, is over there already, and Stela Anastasaki, Charis Gullickson, Haroula Hadjinicolaou, and Annalisa Trasatti. We're moving into another critical subject within our field and within the conference this year, which has to do with how really inclusive and accessible one museum can be. So an amazing women's panel. Tatiana, the floor is yours.
So is this functional? Right. So hello, everybody. I will be speaking in English. My name is Tatiana Karapanagioti, and I'm delighted to have this wonderful panelists, group of panelists talking through this quite complex issue here today. I'm a member of a non-profit organization called LifeisforAll here in Greece, where we're dealing with, we promote inclusion of people with learning disabilities, physical difficulties, and neurodevelopment disorders. Responsible information is being addressed in order to create awareness and to build a more caring society. So we have 4 different cities here among us: Athens, Thessalonica, Ancona, and Tromsø, if I'm correct. And however far away we are geographically one from another, I think we all agree that accessibility is not a social issue, but it's a cultural one, right? And here we don't have perfect recipes, and nothing in our lives is simple. So let's crash on our discussion. I would very much appreciate time is limited, and our panelists to stick to the time framework we've just discussed, so we can have all our introductions, and there afterwards to be able to have a discussion among ourselves. So I'll start from Annalisa Trasatti. She's the coordinator of the museum Tattile, Statale, Omero in Ancona, Italy. You have been part of a pioneering institution, right, which has embraced inclusivity in a unique way, universally. In 1998, it was embraced from a private initiative. It was embraced by the Ministry of Culture and the municipality, creating it, therefore, as a national museum, which is quite a benchmark for the rest of us. So, Annalisa, you guide us through this wonderful thing.
So, hello.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, yeah, now it's open. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm happy because I'm a part of a really big and happy history, because the museum in which I work is unique in the world. It's a tactile museum, a museum where it's forbidden not to touch. So it's the contrary. And the idea was of a couple of blind people, Aldo and Daniela. So we have a father and a mother's museum. They are a couple. Aldo Grassini is still our president. They are really big travelers. They also speak the Esperanto language. So their life is over any type of barriers. Professor Aldo Grassini was also a teacher of history and philosophy, so it's a really special person. And their experience was to visit lots of museums all over the world, and every time they ask to touch something, because blind people must touch to see. So it's a different way of seeing, of watching. They have to use their hands. And always they say to them, no, it's forbidden. And when they come back in 1985 from a holiday, they were really angry. They were really frustrated. And from these bad feelings, they had the idea to create in Italy, in Ancona, a museum for everyone where everybody can touch. We have copies, and obviously, of the most important statues from the Greek period to Michelangelo and Canova. We have lots of models, architectural models, so maquette, biggest and small. But we have also lots of contemporary art, so original pieces. And we do exhibition with original pieces. So I finish now saying that the Italian recipe of accessibility for blind people is to touch everything, above all, to touch the original pieces when it's possible, because it's easy to touch some copies, but the best feelings for everyone is to touch the original. And we can do it sometimes.
Annalisa, it's been wonderful, and I hope we can find ways of maybe collaborating with other museums throughout Europe and throughout the world. Because I mean, in Greece we have a museum of blind art for blind
we
people,
know each other,
which is very poor compared to what you've described. I'm very envious already. So let's hope. Stela Anastasaki, an art historian, co-founder of Offstream, which is a non-profit organization which promotes equal inclusion of people with disabilities. We're in a country like Greece, where the state does very little towards accessibility. The importance of the private sector and of the NGOs is vital. And here we have an NGO which has a very hands-on approach, using experimentation, art and culture in order to change behaviors. Stella will talk us through her project, Meeting Points.
Yes, καλησπέρα σας. Με προβλημάτισε πολύ το θέμα σε ποια γλώσσα θα μιλήσω σήμερα. Και σκεπτόμενοι λίγο το κοινό που υπάρχει στην αίθουσα, αλλά και τα άτομα με αναπηρία που μπορεί να παρακολουθούν, αποφάσισα να μιλήσω στα ελληνικά. Ονομάζομαι Στέλα Αναστασάκη, είμαι κοντή στο ύψος, είμαι γυναίκα λευκή, γύρω στα 42, φοράω ένα μπλε φωτεινό πουκάμισο, μαύρο πατελόνι, μαύρα παπούτσια, έχω καστανά μαλλιά μέχρι τους ώμους, καστανά μάτια. Αυτά βασικά σε σχέση με την περιγραφή της παρουσίασής μου. Είμαι ιστορικός τέχνης και σήμερα εδώ δεν εκπροσωπώ μονάχα την συνεργάτηδά μου και συνιδρύτρια της Offstream, τη Χριστίνα Βλάχου, αλλά όλα τους συνεργάτες και τις συνεργάτηδες που έχουμε συμπορευτεί τα τελευταία 4 χρόνια από τη Θεσσαλονίκη, την Αθήνα, τη Λάρισα και την Κρήτη και μας έχουν συμβουλέψει σε όλα τα στάδια της διαδρομής μας και σε ό,τι έχουμε δημιουργήσει μέχρι στιγμής. Η Χριστίνα και εγώ, προερχόμενες από το πεδίο του σύγχρονου πολιτισμού και των μουσείων και έχοντας δουλέψει στο χώρο για πάνω από 10 χρόνια, κάποια στιγμή συνειδητοποιήσαμε ότι τα μουσεία και οι συλλογές τους δεν είναι τόσο προσβάσιμες και συμπεριληπτικές όσο θα θέλαμε. Και το 2021 αποφασίσαμε να ενώσουμε τις δυνάμεις μας για να δημιουργήσουμε την Offstream, μια πρωτοβουλία που εστιάζει στον πολιτισμό, την εκπαίδευση και φυσικά τη συμπερίληψη. Και για μας αποτελεί ένα κοινό τόπο που άτομα και μειονότητες που συνήθως δεν εκπροσωπούνται στον χώρο των μουσείων βρίσκουν χώρο έκφρασης. Από το 2021 μέχρι σήμερα έχουμε συνεργαστεί με μουσεία στη Θεσσαλονίκη, την Αθήνα και τη Λάρισα για να εφαρμόσουμε συμπεριληπτικές λύσεις που έρουν τους αποκλεισμούς και να καταστήσουμε μέρος των συλλογών τους προσβάσιμες σε άτομα με οπτική αναπηρία. 3 πράγματα που έχουμε μάθει από την εμπειρία μας τα τελευταία χρόνια, δουλεύοντας στο πεδίο της συμπερίληψης ατόμων με αναπηρία, θα ήθελα να μοιραστώ σήμερα μαζί σας. Το πρώτο είναι ότι οτιδήποτε αναπτύσσουμε και εφαρμόζουμε δεν έχει εφαρμογή μόνο στο πεδίο των μουσείων και του πολιτισμού, αλλά βρίσκει χώρο και στην καθημερινότητά μας. Και το πιο σημαντικό είναι ότι όλα αυτά τα πράγματα θα πρέπει να αναπτύσσονται σε συνεργασία με τις ίδιες τις κοινότητες στις οποίες απευθυνόμαστε, αγκαλιάζοντας και το μότο της ίδιας της κοινότητας των ατόμων με αναπηρία, τίποτα για εμάς χωρίς εμάς. Το δεύτερο είναι ότι όλες αυτές οι συμπεριληπτικές εφαρμογές τελικά εμπλουτίζουν την εμπειρία, τη μουσιακή εμπειρία όλων των ομάδων κοινού ανεξαιρέτως. Και μία διαπίστωση έτσι που αποκομίσαμε τα τελευταία χρόνια είναι ότι δεν αρκεί τα μουσεία να δημιουργήσουν προσβάσιμα εκθέματα στις συλλογές τους. Χρειάζεται να πλαισιώσουν αυτά τα εκθέματα με συμπεριληπτικές δράσεις, όπου αυτές οι κοινότητες να συμπεριλαμβάνονται και να συμμετέχουν ισότιμα. Κάπου εκεί, λοιπόν, ερχόμαστε και εμείς να συνδέσουμε το μουσείο με αυτές τις κοινότητες και προέκυψε έτσι, μέσα από αυτή την εμπειρία, και η ανάγκη μας να δημιουργήσουμε τα σημεία συνάντησης, αυτό το project για το οποίο θα ήθελα να μιλήσω σήμερα, το οποίο υποστηρίχθηκε από το Υπουργείο Πολιτισμού και από το πρόγραμμα Σημεία Στήριξης με δωρεά του Ιδρύματος Λάτσι. Τα σημεία συνάντησης ήταν μια σειρά από δράσεις κοινού που πραγματοποιήθηκαν σε 10 μουσεία της Ελλάδας, σε 4 πόλεις, το τελευταίο τρίμηνο του 2023. Επρόκειτο για, κάθε μουσείο μετατράπηκε σε σημείο συνάντησης, όπου άτομα βλέποντα, ακούοντα, τυφλά και κοφά, είχαν την ευκαιρία να έρθουν σε επαφή με ένα συγκεκριμένο έκθεμα, να το γνωρίσουν πολυαισθητηριακά, να ανταλλάξουμε απόψεις και εν τέλει να δημιουργήσουμε την δημιουργική περιγραφή του ίδιου του εκθέματος. Πολλά άτομα που συμμετείχαν στις δράσεις ανέφεραν ότι ήταν η πρώτη φορά που αισθάνθηκαν ουσιαστική επαφή με έργα σύγχρονης τέχνης και ένα άτομο ανέφερε ότι αυτή η δράση έσπασε το όριο μεταξύ ατόμων με και χωρίς αναπηρία, κάνοντας μας να δουλεύουμε σαν μια καλά δεμένη ομάδα. Το αποτέλεσμα αυτών των δράσεων κοινού πήρε τη μορφή μιας συλλογής από καθολικά προσβάσιμες καρτοστάλ όπως αυτές που κρατάω στα χέρια μου και θα μπορούσαμε να μοιράσουμε κάποια δείγματα και στο κοινό αργότερα, οι οποίες είναι καθολικά προσβάσιμες και σκανώνοντας τον QR κωδικό που βρίσκεται στην πίσω όψη της κάθε κάρτας, το κάθε άτομο έχει πρόσβαση στην συλλογική δημιουργική περιγραφή που προέκυψε από αυτές τις συναντήσεις. Στα σημεία συνάντησης συμμετείχαν στο σύνολο 142 άτομα, μεταξύ των οποίων, 55 από τα οποία ήταν άτομα με αναπηρίες, δηλαδή το 39%, ένα ποσοστό, κατά τη γνώμη μας, αρκετά μεγάλο, που δηλώνει και την αναγκαιότητα αυτών των δράσεων. Κάνοντας αυτή τη δράση κοινού, για μας ήταν ένα ορόσημο, δίνοντάς μας την ευκαιρία να δημιουργήσουμε μια πρωτότυπη μεθοδολογία για τις δράσεις κοινού και ένα καινοτόμο προϊόν που συνδυάζει τον πολιτισμό με την κοινωνική καινοτομία, την προσβασιμότητα και τον τουρισμό και διατίθεται αυτή τη στιγμή στα απολυτήρια των συνεργαζόμενων μουσείων. Σας παροτρύνουμε να αναζητήσετε αυτή τη συλλογή και με χαρά να μοιραστώ και περισσότερες πληροφορίες σε σχέση με αυτό το project μαζί σας. Ευχαριστώ.
Well, that sounds absolutely fascinating.
Πριν ολοκληρώσω, θα ήθελα να περιγράψω τη φωτογραφία που παρουσιάζεται δίπλα μας. Αριστερά μου υπάρχει μια οθόνη στην οποία φαίνεται μια φωτογραφία από το σημείο συνάντησης νούμερο 3 στο Εθνικό Μουσείο Σύγχρονης Τέχνης, το ΕΜΣΤ, όπου μια ομάδα περίπου 25 ατόμων κάθονται σε καρέκλες ανάμεσα στην εγκατάσταση του Γιάννη Κουνέλη, που αποτελείται από μεταλλικούς σταυρούς πλαγιασμένους και ένα τραπέζι στο οποίο υπάρχουν σάκια από λινάτσα γεμάτη με κάρβουνο. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Well, keep on the good work, Stella. We look forward looking at further projects of yours. The floor to Charis and Gullickson. She's a senior curator at the Nordnorsk Kunstmuseum in Tromsø, in Norway, miles away from the south of Europe, and sort of promoting and giving the chance for people with disability for a higher quality in their life than the rest of the south of Europe, as far as we know, and we're quite envious of that. However, Charis, once more, she's always questioning the status quo. She's pushing existing boundaries, constantly redefining her own environment, and she will guide us through and talk us about her PhD research and the activist group. Charis.
And I have an image.
Yes.
Yes, there it is. I follow in the footsteps of Mr. Lopez, the earlier keynote. I practice feminist standpoint theory in my work, meaning I situate my positionality. I'm an immigrant to Sápmi, northern Norway, and I've lived in this place for 20 years. My heart lies in the circumpolar north. I'm a settler born and raised in Alaska on Turtle Island. I'm a mother to 2 children and non-Indigenous. I'm also a board member of ICOM Norway. And I'm trying to keep this short. So this image takes us back to 2019 and the exhibition Like Betsy, featuring 19th century painter Betsy Akerslottberg. We see Nordnorsk Kunstmuseum in the background, a fully state-funded museum where I work as a curator. In English, it would be Northern Norway Art Museum. I've been working here since 2008 under 3 different directors. And during my employment, I witnessed, along with our team, a trajectory shift at the museum during Jeremy McGowan's leadership from 2016 to 2020. Nordnorsk Kunstmuseum shifted from what one might describe a shrine metaphor of the museum. In 2017, we transformed the museum through what we called a museum performance, becoming Sami Daide Museet, or Sami Art Museum. in collaboration with Museet, the Sami Museum in Karasjok. For 2 months, Nordnorsk Kunstmuseum disappeared. This to draw attention to the fact that there is still no Sami art museum in Norway, despite there being a Sami art collection that has been growing over the past 40 years, but remains in storage in Karasjok. Nordnorsk Kunstmuseum hadn't really been working with critical perspectives before this time, and in particular, not with self-critical perspectives. Here it's also important to remember where this museum is located, in Tromsø, which is 300 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, in Sápmi, or Sami homeland, on the Norwegian side of the border. Sápmi stretches across Norway, Sweden, Finland, and northwest Russia. One piece of institutional change as a result of this project was the incorporation of Norse Sami language into communication platforms at the museum. And for the first time, Sami artists visited our museum and said they felt at home for the first time in our institution's history. Even though we had had Sami art exhibitions early, we had never had the language in our building. Now let's return to this image from 2019. Here we also focused critical pedagogies and intervened in the exhibition with what we called museum hacks. These were 21 unfun facts about today's art world, mounted adjacent to Akerslotberg's paintings, and I'm going to talk about this in the masterclass more tomorrow. But here for this exhibition, you can see outside the walls of the museum, we performed museum hacks on heroic male monuments. To understand what this wooden crate on polar explorer Roald Amundsen is, we need to look at Betsy Akerslotberg. She was a maritime painter, and her signature tool was a wooden crate she sat inside when painting in the open air. The interventions activated statuary that was previously left out of sight and out of mind. Now, with one turn of the head, those who passed the monuments hundreds of times before were forced to notice and hopefully to reflect on and question who had or had not been commemorated in their communities. For example, we do not have a commemorative sculpture of a named woman in our town. This strategy was twofold. For one, to create an art historical exhibition as a space for critical discourse about gender inequality, and two, to demonstrate the relevance of Akerslotberg's art today. The interventions triggered a kill the messenger reaction. We talked a little bit about resistance this morning. We hit a nerve. And this showed that the Vox Populi judged temporary wooden crates on public monuments to be more provocative than female artists forgotten in Norwegian art history. 2 months after this image was taken, I started my public sector PhD. And these pedagogies I just talked about became one of the case studies in my dissertation. At the close of the Like exhibition, this crate was removed from Roald Amundsen. And little did I know, or anyone else, that our museum director, Jeremy McGowan, would be fired 2 months after the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus a global pandemic. The board's decision of McGowan's immediate removal was enacted by right-wing career politicians appointed directly to leadership positions on the museum's board by the Norwegian Ministry of Culture only 2 months prior. So why is this important? Why am I talking about this in the context of museum and trust? When we are talking about trust, it's also important to acknowledge trust's twin sister, distrust. In the aftermath of Jeremy McGowan's removal, several members of staff, the majority, wrote letters of distrust to the Norwegian Minister of Culture and to the Norwegian Foundation Authority. It didn't change the board's decision. Sometimes we don't start caring about structures until those structures affect us personally, or until we personally experience oppression. And that's how my PhD work altered course and became a project to see in art museum practices, to understand systems of power and hierarchical structures. It also initiated the activist group, and I'm just going to close with my second image, which is a t-shirt.
You have to translate this for us.
So this is piggybacking off of Mike Morawski and Latanya Autry's movement in Turtle Island called Museums Are Not Neutral. This is Norwegian for Museums Are Not Neutral. Museer er ikke nøytrale. Translated into Norse Sami, Museet er nøytralet. Thank you.
Well, I think I understated in my introduction how forceful and sort of game changer is Charis. So, you know, go for it. So let's pass to the last but not least of our speakers. Haroula Hadjinicolaou is an art historian in the Department of Education at the Benaki Museum here in Greece. Ms. Hadjinicolaou has a long experience over the last 10 years with educational programs at the Benaki Museum, which is a very participatory museum and very active in this field of accessibility. We've collaborated already as LifeisforAll with them. However, today, Haroula will focus on something completely different and unexpected. However, I think it will all make sense once we hear about it, is the importance. She will analyze how the Mediterranean diet is important to the body and the mental health. So the floor is yours, Haroula, and let's hear you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I will talk about museum and trust by giving an example. I will try to describe in 3 minutes a case study. So, the Museum Time program was inaugurated in the summer of 2022, springing from the lived experience of 2 fundamental initiatives: the programs for the science schools and the 10-year-old Seeing with the Senses for visitors with visual impairment. Immediately after the pandemic, the Benaki Museum took the decision to reach out to a new, also vulnerable audience, namely visitors with memory difficulties, mild cognitive impairment, or early stages of dementia. Today, the museum time is offered on a regular basis, namely every 2 months. Dementia is a disorder of the brain's mental function, affecting memory, thinking, orientation, comprehension, calculation, learning ability, language, and judgment. In the past 2 years, the museum engaged with this group and their caregivers, from families to institutions and daycare centers, supporting a unique relationship with the museum's extraordinary collection. Aesthetic enjoyment, creative expression, and social exchange via encounters with culture can be an ideal counterweight to isolation and stigma. The sensory approach, multi-prismatic by definition, is the general framework used for employing a range of memories and encouraging and fostering associations with a variety of tactile museum objects. To be more specific, we addressed the olfactory memory in a wellness workshop, activated the imagination in 2 and 3 dimensions, and finally designed alternative tools with a range of musical stimuli. The recent museum time meetings have been a thematic unit devoted to taste. I would like now to focus on this last one as a case study, since it is with taste that we feel we have gone one step further. Drawing from the scientific data on the importance of diet and lifestyle in the prevention and treatment of Alzheimer's disease and cognitive impairment in general, a series of activations were orchestrated around the so-called Mediterranean diet, MED diet, which is a plant-based eating pattern. At the first summer meeting of the program, we organized the visit around utilitarian objects used in food preparation from the Bronze Age to the early Byzantine centuries. We looked for common characteristics between the culinary preferences of the Mycenaeans, the Athenian symposium hosts, or the pious Christians of the great Byzantine Empire. In the second part, held in autumn, we journeyed into the tempting world of taste through the representation of a formal dinner in Delphi during the years of the Ottoman occupation, and ended with the agricultural tools that were used in the Greek countryside in the last century. In addition, during World Alzheimer's Month, in collaboration with the Alzheimer Athens organization, we organized an event open to the public with lectures around the benefits of the MED diet nutritional model. The event was presented again as a simulation program for 20 colleagues from Greece and abroad in the context of the ICOM-SECA 2024 conference, which Athens hosted for the first time here at the Benaki Museum just a few weeks ago. Let us now refer to the methods and tools we use to engage with the audience. The topic of nutrition is a common field of interest. It is connected to the daily life of the participants and allows us to draw associations through other senses as well. Verbal and emotional communication with simple, short, and open-ended questions around a small number of objects allowed us to compose a concise narrative about the era. Talking about the Mediterranean diet, we referred in practice to a way of life common to all neighboring people, which includes eating habits, such as the importance of moderation in consumption, seasonality, and the enjoyment of food preparation. The importance of quality nutrition in relation to an holistic health pattern that includes physical exercise and good quality sleep. Repetition and multiple links between the museum experience and recollections from their personal lives. At the same time, the participants learned new things, which they enthusiastically exchanged with each other. Photographs from the museum's archives facilitated the transition from the abstract concepts to more specific notions. The highlighting of traditional ways of growing, processing, and transporting food in the Greek countryside triggered emotional recollections from the participants' home places. All had something to remember from their deeply stored youthful experiences. Hands-on objects, comparisons, and parallels, such as between the scene of ancient banquet and an icon depicting a Byzantine dinner, offered additional stimuli. Sociability, a counterweight to exclusion and the stigma of illness, was fostered through a shared meal which concluded the program. The shared lunch with a typical Med-diet menu was generously offered by the museum's partner, Hypnos of Hysteria Catering. You can see it here. The recent publication, Playing with Taste Through the Ages, comprising exercises and games for cognitive empowerment, was also kindly sponsored by the same partner. The booklet is now available on the museum's website. The Med-diet, in its mapping in the museum, would perhaps be an opportunity to connect and communicate with regional audiences where tradition is still evident in everyday life. In conclusion, I would like to highlight the invaluable support of the program's scientific advisor, Mrs. Alexandra Economou, professor at the University of Athens in the field of neuropsychology. In our initial conversations, she was the first to point out the antioxidant benefits of olive oil and was able to provide supporting scientific information. We anticipate that as the program's networking and credibility develops, future research might explore the medical benefits of interventions such as this museum program on the health and well-being of the participants.
Well, how lovely. We seem to be quite lucky in one thing living in Greece. One of the few things which we can say. Thank you very much. So let me get back to you. I have 4 different questions for each one of you, one for each one of you, I mean. Annalisa, I think we all agree of the importance of the state, the role and the institution play in forming opinions and behaviors. From elementary school and sometimes even in preschool, children with neurodevelopment differences feel marginalized. Our educational system in Greece fails to support these neurodiverse children to learn, grow, and reach their full potential. Teaching methods are designed without considering their specific learning needs. To what I understand, that in Italy, a national law was implemented in 1975 towards accessibility and inclusivity. Is this a world, did this create a world beyond barriers? I mean, could you describe us about what was this change and how this implementation of law, what consequences
We
it
already
had?
say there are no perfect recipe, but the Italian culture and the Tattile Museum was born in Ancona also thanks to this former teacher, Professor Aldo Grassini, who was a blind student that wanted to go away from the Blind Institute in Bologna. He wanted to study at school with the others because he wanted to share and to have fun with his friends. So first he had this personal experience of studying inside the public school without a law. So thanks to the director that permit him to study. And then when he became a teacher, a philosophy teacher, he, with the Union Blind, the National Union Blind, he tried to change this school method. So in 1977, from 1977 in Italy, there is an inclusion school models. So from the beginning till university, there are some support teachers, some special teachers that has to help the whole classroom, not only the visual impaired or the person with disabilities, and so everyone can share the school with the others. So for us, it's a simple. Every one of us in Italy has been in class with a friend with disability. So if there is a blind student, you wanted to understand what's the Braille alphabet, so you want to share it with him, and so on. So it's a really big enrichment for everyone. There are always, obviously, there is some problem when the people with are big disabilities and so on. But the main idea is that sharing experience and sharing life is an important part of life of everyone. So blind people, even if there are lots of rights, lots of economics help and support, they want to live with the others. So it's important also to have a possibility to work with the other and to do everything. So at the end of this process, there is the museum, because also culture is a right. It's not only something to go on your free time. It's something that gives you happiness, pleasure, and so the beauty of the Tattile Museum is that an idea that came from a minority, so blind people, blind association, it's a good idea for everyone, because every one of us love to touch, wants to touch. But then when we grow up, adults say to us that it's not forbidden. On the contrary, touch is really one of the most important senses for our growth, for our physical and mental sanity, healthy, and it's something that talks about feelings and love. So it's not an easy moment for touch. We think about the COVID period. Yeah. The touch really was the taboo. And also in different culture, we have to speak with different publics from the different nationality, thinking about their culture. So it's not easy, but it's really fun.
I think social exclusion and general exclusion starts with education and school. Yeah. And therefore, because you have this sort of from education, it's sort of easier. I mean, there's a continuity and you're lucky.
Yeah. Sometimes we didn't think about it, and I still tell to my colleagues or to students in Italy, it's important to say that these models is not in every countries, so we are lucky about it. Yeah.
Stella, question on you. As an NGO, you worked a lot with the state. You worked with schools, with the municipalities, with museums. How was your collaboration? I mean, coming from Greece, knowing that you must have had a lot of pushbacks from the state and from all the institutions. I mean, how was this collaboration, and how could this be sort of, as you could give examples to make it better? I mean, what was your experience as an NGO working with the state? I mean, that's
δύσκολη ερώτηση, θα απαντήσω στα ελληνικά. Είμαστε μια νέα πρωτοβουλία, τέλος πάντων, οπότε χρειάζεται χρόνος για να αναπτύξουμε έτσι τα προϊόντα μας, τις συνεργασίες μας, να μας γνωρίσει ο κόσμος. Νομίζω το κλειδί σε όλη αυτή την ιστορία, κατά κύριο λόγο, είναι η εμπιστοσύνη, μιλώντας και για εμπιστοσύνη σήμερα στο συνέδριο. Νομίζω ότι μας πήρε λίγο χρόνο στην αρχή να κερδίσουμε την εμπιστοσύνη της ίδιας της κοινότητας των ατόμων με αναπηρία, αλλά από τη στιγμή που το καταφέραμε αυτό, τα πράγματα γίνανε πολύ πιο εύκολα και γρήγορα μάλιστα πιο εύκολα. Γιατί το σημαντικό, όπως ανέφερα και πριν και έχει αναφέρει και η Annalisa, δεν είναι να δουλεύουμε για αυτούς, αλλά να δουλεύουμε με αυτές τις κοινότητες. Φυσικά η χρηματοδότηση και η υποστήριξη είναι μικρή. αν αγαπάς αυτό που κάνεις και πιστεύεις σε αυτό πραγματικά ότι χρειάζεται και ότι κάνει μια διαφορά, μένεις και φυσικά παίρνουμε έτσι και πάρα πολύ ωραία ανατροφοδότηση από τα ίδια τα άτομα που συμμετέχουν στις δράσεις που κάνουμε, το οποίο έτσι μας γεμίζει ενέργεια και μας δίνει και ένα λόγο για να συνεχίζουμε κάθε φορά, να πηγαίνουμε παρακάτω. Οπότε, ναι, μπορεί να υπάρχουν δυσκολίες σε σχέση με τη βιωσιμότητα ή με την εξέλιξη ενός οργανισμού. Νομίζω ότι όλοι και όλες το βιώνουμε αυτό. Αλλά αξίζει να επιμείνουμε για να δούμε τι άλλο μπορούμε να κάνουμε όλοι και όλες μαζί.
Well, keep on the good strength, I suggest, and because Greece is not an easy country, as well as all the sort of the logistics of the bureaucratical logistics as well, in order to go
Νομίζω
ahead.
ότι αντίστοιχες δυσκολίες υπάρχουν σε όλες τις χώρες,
more or
ιδίως
less not the
σε αυτό το
same,
πεδίο. Δεν είναι ότι μόνο εμείς είμαστε σε αυτή τη θέση. Και βλέπουμε και τεράστια αλλαγή τα τελευταία χρόνια. Το πεδίο έχει ανοίξει, υπάρχουν καινούργιες πρωτοβουλίες που αναδύονται προς αυτή την κατεύθυνση. Οπότε σίγουρα τα πράγματα δεν είναι όπως ήταν 10 χρόνια πριν, το οποίο έτσι είναι αρκετά αισιόδοξο.
Great, thank you. Charis, I know you keep on, you constantly want more, but sort of, do you want to talk to us a lot? You've heard about Italy, we've heard about Greece. How does Norway, I mean, in general, I mean, we always believe that in Norway, people, I mean, what we read, accessibility is far more inclusive and, you know, sort of like the state is much more friendly towards people with disabilities. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about this? I mean, I know you're very skeptical, I know you're questioning. However, I mean, we always feel that the North is more progressive.
I think
maybe not. You might turn upside down all our prejudices.
Well, I think I have to question because I'm in a place of privilege working in the museum, so I have a responsibility. And you have to anchor your work. So my work is not radical. I mean, with the word activism, immediately some people think this is very revolutionary, but my work is actually pretty mainstream, and it's grounded in the ethical guidelines that Norway has actually been ahead of other countries in that respect, because ICOM Norway, together with the Norwegian Museums Association, has made a concretization of ICOM's larger ethical guidelines. So they've catered it more to museums in Norway. And when I'm working, I'm just taking things out of the ethical guidelines. It says on page 14 that museums are not neutral. So we have that here. And it says that museums are supposed to museums are supposed to ask critical questions about the past and the present. So that's another thing that like we should be doing, that I don't think, especially like my knowledge comes from the art museum sector. So I can't speak on like all Norwegians and all museums in Norway. But I think there is this, like you say, this image of Norway being one of the happiest countries in the world to live in. I think Finland is usually number one, and maybe Norway is second or third. But I think it depends from which standpoint you're coming from. So if you talk to someone that's Sami, they might have a different opinion on the matter. And I think that's what's important, is looking at different perspectives and who do the museums represent, and are we perpetuating those narratives, or are we questioning them and you know, working towards progressive, positive social change?
No, that's absolutely logical to keep on sort of questioning all the time, which you are doing. Simply, we always believe that, you know, up north things are not only believed, but we've seen that life is more. There's a quality of life.
There's something called Nordic exceptionalism, and I think there's sometimes this like people don't want to look at the colonial history of Norway, and
that's another element, yeah.
So I think it's easy for Norwegians, and I'm really generalizing, but to think that colonialism happened somewhere else, and these stories are very different, and they're each situated in different contexts, but there are ugly histories in Norway as well, and I think it's important that we address them instead of just pushing them under the carpet.
Right, okay. Well, thank you for this honest sort of answer to the question.
I think honesty is important with trust, and the other word is vulnerability. So those are just like two values that I carry on in my work.
Right. Haroula, coming to you. The power of a result comes from teamwork and synergies. Sort of listening you speak and reading about this program, the case study, which you just talked us through, is quite an ambitious project. And I mean, you had the chance to come and collaborate with different kinds of sectors and people and different stakeholders. Do you want to guide us through this a bit?
Yes, yes. Actually, we couldn't design museum tours without a very close collaboration with the museum's curatorial staff, because talking about objects on display or either objects coming from museum storerooms, it is the expertise of the curatorial staff that this guides us a lot. But special thanks should be given to the conservation department and to the colleagues coming from the conservation department who supported the program with their knowledge and with their participation as well, I must say. Now, talking about outside the museum boundaries, we tried to strengthen bonds and raise synergies with organizations working on dementia care, such as the Alzheimer Organization, Athens Alzheimer Organization, the Psychogeriatric Society Nestor, for example, the KIFI, which is daycare centers for the elderly, and of course participants who, together with their caregivers, they come regularly. We take a lot from these people via the evaluation, which is coming to them via email. We get a lot of things from this point, but sometimes their insightful comments make us revise, change, moderate some aspects of the program. It's very important.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. If we can recap a bit what was being discussed, my conclusion anyway, will be that key changes must occur in two areas. One of them is education, and the other one is employment. Social exclusion begins at school and continues in the workplace for many years that follow. Without inclusion in these sectors, individuals with neurodevelopment disorders will be excluded and will remain disconnected and marginalized in the society. So let us all keep working towards the world we want to create, and I think that's the only thing one can do. I mean, each one of you keep on doing what they want, what you have to do and what you feel passionate about, each one of you in a very different way. Thank you very much, all of you. Is there any question from the public? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks to the list interpreter. Really, really hard and beautiful work.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much to the panelists for your wonderful work and presentations.